Good morning, Senior 2 students. Today we're going to complete our discussion about our play A Doll's House. As we have mentioned the last time, we were speaking about A Doll's House and the main ideas presented through our play. A Doll's House was written by Henrik Ibsen, who was a mere and a very clear feminist. He was one of those who defended female rights at his time. And he was followed by lots of people later and lots of writers defending the same idea and the same conception of feminism. He considered women to be as important as men in the society and sometimes more important than men, and that females were the engine that always give power to the society to move on and to look after everything through our lives. In order to deliver his message, he wrote lots and lots of plays, and one of the best plays that he had written was A Doll's House. In our play, we have our heroine, who was Nora Helmer, and she was the doll that we were speaking about and presented since the very beginning. Nora is presented in every scene of our play. She's presented since the beginning till the end, as she's the heroine. Nora's household at Helmer's house is the house where the doll is living in right now. Nora is one of the female characters who was totally satisfied by the conception of being the doll in her father's house and led in her husband's house. But everything is going to change later on when she discovered that the dream that she was living is not true, and she imagined things that weren't there. We also have her husband, Torvald Helmer, who's looking down to his wife. He always considered her to be little. He's always calling her by pampering names, and he always used the word little before it to show that she was inferior to him. He considered her not only little in size, but she's little in her presence. She's little in her mind. She is little in everything. He represented the selfish males at that time. He represented the dominant male who considered himself the center of the world of any woman. All through the play, we are going to be presented in Torvald's household, in Helmer's household, and characters are going to enter and leave at the same setting. We are not going to leave this place. We are at Christmas time, which is supposed to be celebration for everyone at that time. Everyone is happy, everyone is ready to give, everyone is celebrating the feast, so everyone is happy at that time. After what we have said before, we are going to be presented to a new character, which is another female character that's considered the total opposite of Nora. Our new character's name is Christine, or Mrs. Linde, as she is going to be presented in our play. Mrs. Linde, or Christine, was an old colleague. She used to go to the same school with Nora, and they were friends at that time. They were separated around 7 or maybe more years ago. They had never seen each other all through this time. Both female characters have already had and have already led a different kind of life. While Nora was having a comfortable life, as it's going to be, as it's thought, together with her husband, Torvald, having her 3 children, living, looking after her house and the household, and not working as it's meant to be, yani. Christine, or Mrs. Linde, have a totally different life. She got married years ago, and her husband died. 3 years ago, she became a widow, and since that time, her life was becoming worse and worse. What was clear when we started watching the two ladies, that it's impossible for anyone to believe that they were the same age. Christine or Mrs. Linde looked much more older than Nora. Nora looks so much younger. Nora was a lively character. She was always happy. She's always jumping around. While Christine was a more sensible and a more realistic person. She looked really old and she acted to be much older. Through their conversation, we're going to be presented two very important facts about both of them. First of all, Christine will start telling Nora about her own story and how that she got married years ago. Christine told Nora that years ago she really suffered from very bad social conditions. Her mother was very sick in bed and she had two young brothers whom she needed to really support and provide money for. And that was the main reason that Christine got married to a much older man. Her husband was really old, but he was rich. And that was the main reason that she accepted marrying him. She believed that by marrying that rich old man, she would always have the chance to provide the medicine that her mother needed and to look after her two brothers and raise them, and for herself to be living a good life without any responsibilities or without any problems later on. The rich man did what he was asked. He afforded and provided money for her mother, for Christine's mother. He paid for all her medicine until the lady died. At the same time, he also provided money for her two young brothers who really grew later on through the years, and after some time, after some years, that man died. When Christine told Nora that her husband had died and she'd been a widow 3 years ago, Nora was really sad for the lady, and she started to apologize that she hadn't sent her a letter to condolence her or anything, but she was really shocked when Christine told her that after the man had died, he left her with nothing. She feels nothing towards him. She's not sad. She is not feeling remorse. She is not feeling upset after his death. On the contrary. And at the same time, he left her with no children. She had no children. The man was already old. And he left her nothing, no money as well. And this was the great shock that Christine had after the death of her husband. She found herself penniless, and she was forced to enter the world of work after her husband died. When Christine started working, she faced the reality that females are difficult to find a good job. Even if they have the skills, they have no opportunities. She tried to work small jobs in order to afford her living. She worked in a small school, sometimes she worked in a small shop, but all the time she was sure that women have no right and have no chances or opportunities in their society. Once she started to tell Nora these things, she was clear and she mentioned to Nora that she understands if Nora didn't understand what she's saying, because Nora had never had problems through her life or was never forced to have any responsibility or financial responsibility. By saying this, she urged Nora to tell her her secret that no one knows about. She told her that years ago, at the beginning of her marriage, when she just had her first child, her husband was really sick. He overworked himself, and he became really sick and was about to die. The doctors told Nora that he's about to die. Nora was young. She had just one child, and her husband was young as well. and she had to sacrifice anything in order to be able to save his life. The doctors told Nora that the only way to save her husband was to make him stop working and to take him and travel to the south. This was the only way for Thorvald to become better and to recover and recuperate later on. The problem was, at that time, such a journey was very expensive and they didn't have the money that could help them to afford doing such a journey. Nora was young. Even her father at that time was really sick. So she had no one to offer or to provide her with the money. She did her best at that time in order to convince her husband to take her to such a journey without telling him the truth about his own illness or about their condition. But it was nearly impossible. When Nora was doing this and was telling Christine or Mrs. Linde about her story, Mrs. Linde remembered how terrible her life was. She remembered the problems that she had to face. She remembered her sad marriage, whom she was forced into in order to provide for her family as well. But Nora insisted that she too had to suffer years ago in order to keep her life and her marriage to go on. At that time, Mrs. Linde told Nora that after the death of her husband and the death of her mother and the growing up of her two brothers, she considered herself unlucky because her life was empty. She used to live for a purpose before, but now she has no one to live for. And that really made Christine sad. After Christine told Nora this and revealed her secret, what happened to her life later on, Nora decided to complete telling Christine the secret or the rest of her secret. She asked Christine how does she think or how does she believe Nora was able to afford for such a very expensive journey. Christine was never able to guess, and the only explanation for having the money in order to save her own husband and to travel to Italy was taking the money from her father, which was what she told Thorvald in the past. She told him that her father was the one who offered the money for them to travel, and in order to convince him, she tried telling him that she is the one who needed the change and she needed them to travel for some time. But Nora insisted that her father gave her nothing. Her father was really sick at that time and he died within that time. He died really when they were outside, when they were in Italy at that time. Mrs. Linde tried to guess how could Nora afford such a big sum of money. And Nora enjoyed letting her guess or thinking what she had done. When Mrs. Linde failed in guessing the real way that Nora was able to afford or to get the money, she told her the secret. She told her that she managed to get the money or borrow the money from someone at that time. When she told Christine that she had borrowed the money, Christine was really astonished. She was really surprised because during that time it was impossible for a wife or even a woman to borrow money but through a male figure. If she is a wife, she's supposed to marry, she's supposed to borrow under the name of her own husband or under the name of her own father. But she is not allowed to sign a contract by her own. Legally, this is not acceptable at all. Nora told Christine that she managed to do a certain trick or something like this, and what she had done enabled her to get the money. And since that time, since all through these years, Nora is now paying the money back through installments or through quarter payment every year, and this wasn't easy at all for her. She told Christine that she was really clever. She was trying to show Christine that she's really clever and she's not helpless as they believed. She told her that she tried to save as much money as she could, and she tried to work from home, anything that she could do that she could sell and bring money. Lots and lots of things had Nora done at home and sell, which really brings scratches of money, and these scraps Nora used in order to pay her installments. When she told Christine this, Christine started to pity her and told her, "Poor Nora, no one knows anything about how you have suffered." And then Christine asked Nora whether her husband knew or not. When Christine mentioned this, Nora told her that she didn't tell her husband at that time, and she's not intending to tell him within the present time. And she said that maybe in the future she would be able to tell him after they grew older and she's not beautiful anymore, or maybe when her husband is not fond of her anymore, she's going to tell him how much she had sacrificed for him in order to honor her and to value her presence. But Christine was totally against this conception. She told her it's impossible to be living together and having that kind of marriage without telling him the truth. It's as if you are deceiving him. When Christine said this to Nora, Nora told her that if she even tried to tell Torvald, this meant that she's going really to hurt and humiliate him at that time. He would feel weak, he would feel that she had harmed his own dignity, and she would never do that to Torvald at that time. She told her that Torvald is now a manager in a bank and their life is going to be much better than before, and she intended to enjoy the amount of money, the great amount of money that they are going to have, and she will forget all about her debt and the money that she had borrowed, and maybe she wouldn't even mention that thing to her husband. She believed that life is going to be much better later on. And she told Christine clearly that she intended to enjoy it and spend as much as she liked. And she would never be forced into borrowing something or doing something wrong from behind her husband's back anymore. Then Christine is going to suggest that maybe Nora would help her have a good job or a good position at the bank. Nora believed that she's able to convince her husband, as she has a strong influence on him, and she promised her that she is going to use the right moment in order to tell her husband about Christine and about the job that she needed, and she believed that she would be able to convince him to do so. After their very good conversation about the past and the present and the promises and things like this, Christine felt that she had to leave at that time in order to let Nora get ready for the party, which she invited Christine for, the party that's going to be to happen at the evening. And their meeting is going to be stopped by the arrival of a guest. That guest is a person or a man who is going to ruin all the happiness that Nora have. The arrival of Mr. Croxted. Croxted is the guest that Nora is going to have at that time. He is somehow a lawyer or a person that we are going to be acquainted with later on. And Croxted is the one or the person who's going to bring real problems to Nora's life, which we are going to be aware and know later in our next videos. Thanks for listening. I hope that you really benefit from these videos. Hope you the best that you could have. Goodbye.